On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with an abuse survivor named Jenna Lee. And unfortunately for Jenna Lee, she was conned into a trusting relationship with a firefighter that methodically broke her down for his own sadistic pleasure and need to control. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, a podcast that gives a voice to survivors of narcissistic abuse. I am Brandon Chadwick, but my friends call me Chad, and thanks for tuning into this episode. So what is a narcissist, you may ask? Well, for the purposes of this podcast, we refer to a narcissist as anyone who has displayed a pattern of behavior that shows a limited capacity to appreciate others' perspectives. It's that simple. And now, before we get to our episode with Jenna Lee, I just want to thank everyone in the Narcissist Apocalypse community for listening to the show and sharing your thoughts by email, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. A big shout out to everyone on our Facebook group who's been participating and helping. It's been fantastic. It's been a wonderful experience. And a reminder, if you haven't left us a review on whatever podcast service you use, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, CastBox, etc., leave us a 5-star written review if you can. It helps out the show when it comes to rankings. If you can't write a review, just click the 5-star button. Now, once again, I have to put a bit of a moratorium on doing recordings because our vetting call and recording call schedule is already pretty booked up to the mid to end of December already. However, if the quickest way to be part of our show is if you want to read a letter to your narcissist and be part of our Letters to Narcissist compilation episode, we've already done number 2. We're going to do number 3. We have a voicemail recorder on our website to record. Go to narcissistapocalypse.com. It's on the right side of the page. It's always floating around. It's hard to miss. There's a button that says send voicemail. Press it and away you'll go. We're accumulating these for volume 3 of that type of episode. So send those voicemails in. If you want myself or my old pal Melissa to read your letter instead, just send it to narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com. Everything is almost out of the way here, but I have one last thing. I've been building a directory, which will be a paid directory for narcissistic abuse therapists and coaches. It's close to being ready for all you professionals out there to populate it. So get a hold of me if you want to be part of that directory. And you can get a hold of me at directory@narcissistapocalypse.com if you're interested in being one of the first professionals on there. And unlike other directories, ours will be attached to a community forum that works a lot like Quora. So when it's up and running, anyone will be able to ask questions on narcissistic abuse, but only those professionals on our directory will be able to answer. I think this is going to be a very valuable resource for everyone involved, and I'm really excited to debut it for everyone in the coming weeks. Hopefully we get it all up and running smoothly by the end of December. So I'm really looking forward to that. And now, I'm going to get out of my own way. Here is my interview with Jenna Lee, and I'll check back in with you when it is all over. Welcome to this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, and with me today I have Jenna Lee. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well, and just so everyone knows out there, you were in a relationship with a firefighter, and this is one of those stories of, trusting someone of authority. We've had one of these stories before with Layla, when Layla trusted a police officer. So if anyone out there is listening and has been in one of these situations and has never really spoken up, this is a really interesting episode for you to listen to because Jenna is a very good storyteller, and she's going to tell this story within the 3-act structure that we have started to do. And now I am just going to, get out of your way and start with the prologue of this. Before Act 1, just kind of give us a background of you.
Yeah. So, I would say I was raised in a pretty typical household. I had a mother who stayed home and a dad who worked full time. Very loving family. They are good parents, but both parents brought in a lot of trauma and a lot of baggage from their past. My mother suffers from severe depression and anxiety. So that's something that I kind of had to watch throughout my childhood and even into my adulthood is, coaching your mom, trying to make things better for her, kind of being the parent in some situations. And then a father who, my dad was a pretty level-headed guy, but he went through some really severe trauma in his childhood. A lot of brothers and sisters who suffered through mental illness. And then right before my parents got married, my dad's parents were killed by a drunk driver. So he's had, unresolved trauma, things that he hadn't dealt with. And obviously that trickles down into, your future will trickle, it moves forward into your future and, the relationships with your children. I had great parents. I never doubted that my parents loved me and I, would never have those questions, but they did bring a lot of drama. There was, with the mental health issues, there's a lot of chaos. So, I would say that I was pretty much the rock in the family, like you had mentioned when we had spoke earlier, a loyalist, sounding board to my mom, kind of just that person that my parents would go to whenever there was any issues. One thing that, I struggled with, especially when I was younger, is, a lot of pressure was put on me to be the best in the family. I was the first child. There was a lot of high expectation on me to, do the best, be the best dancer. I was a competitive dancer for 15 years. Be the best at school, have the best friends, have the best relationships. That was kind of how I was raised. So yeah, it, kind of made me into a bit of a perfectionist, somebody who had very, very high expectations of myself. And I put a lot of pressure on myself at a very, very early young age. So, I had a pretty early traumatic experience when I was growing up. I was in a bullying experience where I was involved with a group of girls who were, my best friends for about 16 years. And they decided one day right before graduation, we no longer want you in the group and we no longer want you as a friend. So that bullying experience was devastating. I didn't go to my graduation. I didn't go to my prom. I didn't, even exams. I wrote my exams in a different room because I was so intimidated by these girls. And it was something that I suppressed for years after that, that I'm actually just recently dealing with, is the devastation through that one experience that I had with them. I was devastated. I was young. I was impressionable. And it made me into, although it was one of the worst situations, it also kind of made me into, the person I was going forward in my future. So, throughout my life, I guess I can look back and I realized I definitely have some boundary issues, and that started when I was very young. I was successful, confident, I was determined growing up, but I had those boundaries issues and it was getting worse in my personal life. In my early 20s, I was pretty much a workaholic. I was determined to prove to anybody in my past that I could do this all on my own. And I think especially from just the way I was raised and compared to even the situation I went with the girls, I felt like I had to prove something to somebody. So that kind of, that's kind of a little bit of a idea of, how I was raised and how, some of the situations that I went through, at a younger age.
And also, when people are listening, and we've discussed on earlier episodes, that this can happen to anyone. Narcissistic abuse, domestic abuse can happen to anyone, no matter what your social, economic status is. And you were someone who was independent, well off on your own, a great career.
Yeah.
And confident in it, and had no problems financially in any sort of way. And it's something a lot of people wouldn't think that someone like you from the outward would think that this could happen to you. And just for everyone out there, this is, a story as well, as this can happen to anyone. So,
yeah. That was my goal, my determination was, I'm going to be successful in my career. I bought my first house at 26. I flipped it. I bought an investment property. I worked my way up in the company. I was a very confident, independent woman. And, it absolutely can happen to anybody. Narcissistic people tend to, like we had discussed, they go for, good, solid, strong people. There is no, nobody is off game for them. If that makes sense.
you're proof of it. I mean, in a strange way, this person we're about to discuss is about to come in Act 1 and take your trust and knows exactly how to gain your trust. So Act 1 is all about trust, and now I'm just going to, again, remove myself from the conversation.
Yeah. I met my my ex-narcissist on a dating app, actually. I met him on Bumble. I was new to the dating scene, the online dating scene. You know, I saw a lot of people around me who were getting married, and they met people online. So I thought, you know what, like, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? Why not just give it a shot, see where it goes? I mean, what could go wrong? If I meet somebody, great. If I don't, then whatever. So I was going on a few dates. But after the dates, I just wasn't feeling it. I didn't feel a connection or chemistry with some of the guys I was going out with. So I was starting to feel a little bit discouraged. Maybe this just isn't the route for me. So I remember actually after one night that I was on with somebody, I remember going home and saying, I'm done with this. Like, I can't keep going on these dates and not feeling anything. It's becoming very discouraging. When I noticed that my app had a match with my ex. We first started talking, you know, he seemed like a really great guy, very genuine through our text message conversations. Like, we had a lot of things in common. You know, we wanted the same things in the future. So I thought, okay, maybe this actually is a genuine good guy. We kept talking during the week. We finally set up a phone call. He was incredibly charismatic, but almost a little bit too much, where there was points in the conversation where I'm like, I don't think I'm getting a word in here. Like, and I'd even joke about him with that. And he would just say, oh, yeah, I'm nervous. I'm excited to talk to you. You know, I remember talking about his career and him, you know, basically saying that, it was my job. I just, now I don't feel anything when I see somebody die. And things don't bother me anymore. And suffering doesn't bother me. And I remember making a little joke with him and saying, like, oh, are you a sociopath? Like, because that seems very sociopathic behavior, that you don't have feelings and you don't care. And I remember him laughing and saying, no, it's just because of my job. It's just because of some of the things I see, right? So I kind of brushed it off. I remember setting up a date for that weekend, and we had actually just met at a local bar. So we first met. I remember immediately I didn't feel like that immediate. When I first met him, I didn't feel an immediate spark. I didn't feel a real strong connection. There was a bit of attraction, but it wasn't immediate. So I was a little bit disappointed, and I wasn't sure if he was my type. But again, that side of me is like, oh, just give it a shot. Like, you never know. Just stop being so picky with people. So we sat down, we got talking. You know, he's building, my trust. He's telling me, he's suffered with anxiety, he's had a problem with drinking in his past, he's had a lot of family issues. We're just opening up with one another, and I'm feeling like, okay, maybe he trusts me. Maybe this is maybe he is a good person. He's been through a lot of hard times. We did have that connection was slowly being developed. And I guess there was a side of me that felt some empathy towards him, or like he's been hard done by. And then he was just hitting that side of me, that empathy. So by the end of the night, I remember, like, we're holding hands across the table. He's telling me, how many kids he wants to have, and that I'm so special, and he's been waiting to meet a girl like me. And I guess where I was in that point of my life, in my life, I felt, validated by that. And I felt like the things that I really wanted were, okay, finally somebody's talking to me about kids. Finally somebody's talking to me about wanting to get married one day. And, I'm a 32-year-old woman who's looking for those types of things. I'm finally feeling like maybe I met somebody who's genuine and who wants the same things as me. So again, trust was gained during that first meeting, and just his openness. And, he had talked to me about his mom and dad being very hard on him growing up, and that his brother was the golden child and he was the black sheep of the family. And, again, that conversation kept coming up again and again in the relationship. Obviously, it actually played a huge role in it, in some of our big issues. He mentioned he was looking for the one. He wanted to get married. He wanted to have kids. How much he knew all the things that I loved. He knew I had told him how much I love my family, how much I love my niece and my nephew. He knew how he knew how important family was to me and that was everything to me. And I had told him from the very beginning that anybody I get involved with, that relationship with my family is so important, and it's key to the relationship being successful is, can everybody get along? Yeah. So he is very much mirroring what I wanted at this point. He was making me feel like he was very genuine, sincere. And I didn't really at that point have any reason to doubt him. But I will be honest, within that first meeting, there were a few red flags that did come out. He had spoke very negatively of a lot of his past exes. He said he was engaged a few years prior, and he compared her to the devil, and said she was a terrible person and that she cheated on him and she just did him wrong, and she turned out to be completely different than what she said she was. And I think he even said she was a narcissist. Even he was playing into that. And I remember again playing into my empathy side, where I thought, oh, how awful. Here's this guy that wants this future with a family, and he's getting, hurt left, center, and right by all of these people.
For you at this point, for everyone listening, and who's either never experienced this or has experienced this is where your trust is fully complete. Where one, we have a firefighter, check.
Yeah.
Here's a profession. Yeah. Number two, this person has used the victim card in one way to gain the empathy in you. So now you're feeling for him as if, not that he needs to be fixed, but, or to pity him, but you're feeling for how he grew up. Boom, he's got you. Number two. Three, the big one, the mirroring. The mirroring he's done here is probably expert, because he's taken what you have said. He's learned from it, and he can probably tell every time he's playing that card and he's throwing a new one out there. Oh, kids. Oh, look how she reacted there. This, look how she reacted there. Boom. Okay. Yeah, I got her. And that one, I assume, was probably the biggest of the three.
Oh, the mirroring. Absolutely. He was portraying himself to be every single thing that I wanted. And
especially the family. The family aspect, kids, because you were a certain age, and he could probably see that, this is the age people want to have kids, along those lines. And it was really, he really hit you exactly where he needed to hit to get that final bit of extreme trust that now he has you here. And now I guess Act 2 would be able to begin, where you would test your boundaries, see how far he can take things before love bombing happens, devaluing, and really create the fog of control, of fear, obligation, and guilt. So I guess that would happen next, correct?
Yes. So, I guess, like you had said prior, he was a master manipulator. He knew, this is years of experience. This isn't just, he's not new to the game. He knew what he was doing. He knew my vulnerabilities, and he knew my weaknesses, and he knew the things that were a no-go for me that I wasn't going to tolerate in a relationship very, very early on. This wasn't just, 6 months down the road, I'm going to tell you these are what I fear. He knew probably within the first date or two. Yeah,
you gave him an early blueprint of what he needed to say and how he needed to act.
Yeah, I spelled it out for him, and then he basically took that information and did exactly what I had told him would hurt me. Do you know what it's crazy. I guess I can go into this a little bit more, as well as after that, we set a second date up. I remember, this is where some of the boundary pushing started to really happen. The second date he set up, he said, let's have it at my house. Again, a bit boundary pushing for me, because I'm somebody who's okay, maybe that's a little bit too soon. We've only gone on one date. Maybe we need to go do some more stuff outside of the house before that. But he had a really good way of suckering me in and making it seem like his intentions were pure in everything he did. So anyways, I agreed to it. I ended up going over after work one day, and I remember walking into his house. And again, let's keep in mind, he's met me once. He was all over me. I didn't even have a moment to digest even what his house looked like. He had me, picked up, swinging me around the house. It was very overwhelming. So it was just he was always just too much. There was just too much. And it was almost just like he was doing that. It was, I'll be honest with you, it was sort of creepy and almost like, I look back on it now and think like there was a bit of an obsession to it. Like he was obsessed. But anyways, we ended up talking for a few hours, and, you know, of course, a lot of the conversation was focused in on me and, you know, my desires and what I wanted. I'm sure he's sitting there just learning, you know, exactly what I want. And, by the end of the night, you know, I did end up staying the night with him. And again, that's not really like me, but for some reason that did happen. And I remember waking up the next morning and we talked for hours. And I remember feeling like maybe I found, like it seems like this is genuine. Like, there are red flags here and there, but I'm going to ignore them. I'm going to look past them, and I'm just going to keep going with this because I still feel a connection. And here we are talking in bed for hours. Like it felt right in the most twisted way. So I remember before I left his house, we had coffee, and I remember saying basically, you know, we were just talking about things in general. I said how I love to go for drives during the day. On the weekends, and go and look at houses. And it's just always been something I love to do. I mean, I love real estate and I love looking at property. And I remember him looking at me dead in the eyes and saying, "This is how I know we're supposed to be together." And I remember thinking like, okay, like, I don't even know if I'm 100% in this. Like, this is the second time I'm meeting you. It feels a little bit too soon. But again, the dream is still there. I'm still in the back of my mind thinking, okay, Jen, just give this an opportunity to develop. Allow it. Allow yourself to give somebody a chance and to trust somebody and to think that somebody's intentions are pure for once, right? So, I mean, and that kind of plays into the whole relationship, is the fact that he never gave me an opportunity to figure out my true feelings for him early on from the get-go. I can't even say I was love bombed. It was just like love bombed almost seems too gentle. It was almost like I just was like love tsunamied with all of this information and how wonderful I was and how beautiful I was and how fantastic. And I was this dream girl and I was this everything he was looking for.
Well, I'm actually going to compare it to when there's a hacker in the world of hacking, something that's called a DDoS attack. And a DDoS attack is when an extreme amount of computers that hackers have set up attack an actual server, and the server is just overwhelmed completely by all of what is going on, and then the virus is able to sneak in and do the damage that it needs to do. He's done a version here of a DDoS attack on you, which is just overwhelming to the point where you don't even know what's kind of going on, and it's just so overwhelming that he's been able to enter. Yeah, like I consider myself somewhat of a guarded person and very private, and it takes a time for people to warm up. It takes a little bit of time for people to warm up, for me to warm up to people, and for people to for me to gain, for people to gain my trust. That's just from past experiences and past trauma. That's how I have been. So the fact that he could go in and do all of this, and the only way he could do it is by overwhelming me, and it was too much. And I was completely in a love fog, and I didn't know what was left from right. And I just thought, okay, well, I have to keep going. I felt like there was always this side of me that just was behind this little voice in my head that just said, just keep going, keep trying, keep seeing. Maybe you'll, maybe this is the person for you. So technically this is where Act 1 would end and Act 2 would begin. I was premature with my Act 2 before. That's
okay. That's all right. It's a confusing one. There's a lot going on. I guess after that date, there was just a lot of I know you're the one for me. Even just the fact that he kept saying I know we're supposed to be together, and should ever have to say, I know we're supposed to be together. It should be very much a mutual thing. Going into basically, Act 2 finally.
Before Act 2 begins, and sorry to confuse everyone, there's one story that I want you to tell, which would be part of Act 1, which is also about trust, and that's the key story.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm skipping ahead a little.
That's my fault. I'm being a bad host.
But yeah, 2 or 3 weeks in, he sends me a message saying, "Hey, I got a surprise for you when you come over tonight. I've got something for you." Okay, so I'm thinking, okay, what? Maybe he's got like tickets to a movie. I don't know, like what, maybe, who knows what it could possibly be. So here I am at work thinking the whole day of what the possibility that he has for me. He wouldn't tell me. So I get there, and I remember walking into his living room, and on his dining room table, he had a key and a book that was still in its wrapping. Actually, 2 books that was still in the wrapper still. The 5 love languages. So he said, well, this one's for me. This one's for you. I want you to read this. I think we really need to be on the same page if we really want this to work. We need to understand each other's love languages. And by the way, here is the key to my house. I fully trust you. You come and go as you want. My house is your house. I really want this to work because I can see myself marrying you and having a future with you. So I know it's right. So because I feel like it's right, I want you to have it. And I really did like the guy at this point. For the first few weeks we had together, which sounds crazy, they were good. And I did enjoy my time with him, but I don't know if we were at key level yet. It just seems too early, but I guess that was definitely one of his ways of grabbing my attention. And at that point thinking, well, this guy has pure intentions. Look at him. He's giving me a key to his house. Like, there's no possible way that he could have any other, girls on the side or anything. If he's, that fear of cheating, it can't be there if he's giving me a key to his house.
And that's why I think it's an interesting story, especially for other people to hear about that key. In a way, it's a reverse trust game that he played. He is showing trust in you with giving you the key to the home. Then why would you suspect anything would be happening in this home? That's kind of what he was trying to do, but by doing that, and that's a really interesting tactic that someone would use, because in a weird way, it's like a reverse projection, I guess I would maybe call it, where if I give this to her now, then why would she suspect? It's like very much a magician's trick of a sleight of hand. He's giving you this as like, look this way, but it's an illusion. It's kind of like when David Copperfield makes a long time ago, he'd make the Statue of Liberty disappear when you're standing right in front of it. That's what he did with that key when he gave it to you. Yeah,
it's just a smoke screen. It's just a way to say, here you go. Trust me. You have nothing to fear. You have nothing to worry about. And then kind of on the side go, haha, sucker, you're an idiot. Now I'm going, you know what I mean? Like it was just an illusion. So yeah, I would honestly say though, at this point, I really, and it's very early on and it sounds crazy to say it, but I really trusted him at this point, and I didn't think that his intentions were bad. So I kept going with it. So yeah, that's, I think where the part of just trust was officially built was when, that key was given to me, which is a crazy analogy even on one of your posts that I saw, is that, literally physically giving me the key to for all the trust.
I thought of you when I made that.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
I saw it and I went, oh my God, it's like my ex right there.
So now I guess we are officially into Act 2. And again, I apologize to everyone that I've been all over the place this episode. But continue. Act 2, devaluation, the fog, and testing of boundaries.
Yeah. So, again, at this point, I still trust him. I still think he, the one thing I want to establish too is that, going on within the next month or two, we did have a lot of good times together. I want that to be established, is that, we did have a lot of good times together. We did spend a lot of time together. I was spending about 4 or 5 days at his house in a row. It's the weirdest thing to me is that being with him sometimes felt very comfortable. And I had to question that after the relationship ended, because I'm going, why do I feel so comfortable with this person? But, I think that has to do a lot with the mirroring that he was doing with me. So yeah, testing of boundaries. I would say, he was very controlling. like I said, dominating my time and calling me at work every day and texting me all throughout the day. One of the boundary testers for me is he started to bring up girls a lot of female friends. But they were just friends. There was nothing going on. He wasn't attracted to them. There was nothing going on there. He had no feelings. They were not his type, that I had nothing to worry about. So one of the biggest boundary testers very early on in the relationship, I would say, is when he had mentioned, hey, listen, I've got a girl, just a friend. She's got cancer. There's no attraction there. She's going through a lot of hard times. I wanted to take her to the movies. Take her out for lunch. Are you okay with that? Like, are you fine with that? Again, it's probably about 3 weeks in, and I remember thinking, okay, this feels weird because he knows my past and he knows my insecurities, but I'm going to say yes because it's still early on in the relationship, and if he's had this friendship for years, I'm fine with it, so I let him go. I mean, I keep her in mind because she'll play in the story a little bit later on here, but I would say that was, one of the first boundary pushers that he, where my boundaries had to be pushed. Another one, I don't know if you'd call this a boundary push, but it was just something different. He had told me that he didn't tell me. He basically wanted to hear from me very early on that I loved him. He wanted to hear that come out of my mouth. Again, it was pushing my boundary because I wasn't ready to say those words yet. We've only known each other. We're talking still about the 3 weeks to a month, maybe a month mark at this point. It's too early on. I didn't know how I felt about him. Yes, I really liked him, but I don't know if I couldn't say that I was in love with him at that point. So I kept kind of dodging it with him, and he kept pushing back on me, and he said, well, I guess I'm just going to have to work harder to get you to say it. And I'm like, this should be just something that's genuine, that's just said when it feels right. There shouldn't have to be any forcefulness in it. But so he kind of tapered off with it, even though he kind of kept throughout the relation, especially early on, saying we love each other, or I know you love me. I know you feel this way about me. So, of course, he gets me in a vulnerable position one night. We're laying in bed together at his house and just about to fall asleep. And he looks over at me and he says, I love you. And I'm vulnerable at this point. Like, I got nowhere to go. I do, but, we're in bed. And I kind of I said it back. But it wasn't genuine on my end. But it was his way of pushing me to say those words. And it wasn't in a way where it was a genuine way of us saying I love you to each other. It was just for his way to say, I love you. For me to say I love you, and then for him to say, hey, now I've got you. Now I have control, right? Again, there was just a lot of boundaries being pushed and a lot of forcefulness on his end. I just felt like he was always trying to test my boundaries, but at the same time, he love-bombed me so much that I didn't have an opportunity to really say to him, hey, listen, this is going too fast. This is too much too soon, because at the same time, it felt good and it felt right to me for it to be happening. I felt like finally I'm meeting somebody who's so into me and it's so all about me that maybe I just need to keep going. So a lot of the things he also would say to me is he knew cheating was a big one for me. So it always, he pretended to be somebody who would never cheat on me, say, oh, I'm so loyal. You never have to worry about anything. I would never do that to you. All my other firefighter friends, they cheat on their girlfriends and their wives, but I'm that exception. Don't worry about me. I would never do that to you. That was obviously not the case whatsoever. So what I'm going to just kind of get into is a lot of his love bombing started to turn into aggression, or he'd have aggression with love bombing. So I'm going to kind of go through a few situations and kind of explain how that came out. So the first situation is when I actually first met his friends. And this was the first time where I really kind of saw a different side of him, where I actually kind of grew to be a little bit fearful of him. So before meeting his friends, he spoke of his friends very negatively, kind of like he was above them, or like he felt like he was, too good to be their friends, which I always thought was a little bit arrogant, to be honest. So when I first met his friends, I kind of just jumped into the group. I, started talking to the girls and, just getting to know them. And all of a sudden he kept coming up from behind me and aggressively massaging my shoulders. not in a playful, cute way. Like, I'm talking like full-on aggression. And he was hurting me. And I remember telling him, like, stop. Like, why are you doing this? And the other girls that, you know, are sitting there, like, looking at him, like, what are you doing? And here I am, like, I'm 110 pounds. I'm a petite little feminine girl. I'm not, like, that tomboy type that wants to be treated that way. So I kept looking at him and being like, can you please stop? And he looks at me and would say, oh, what? So you'll be affectionate with me in private, but you won't do it in person? And I'm like, that's not affection. You're being aggressive. You're hurting me. So I remember that whole night, like, he'd go off and he would talk with this group of friends. And, I mean, not even talk. He would sit there and stare at a wall while his other friends communicated because he was incredibly socially awkward. I remember just feeling like, I hope this guy doesn't come up again. Like, I kept looking over my shoulder because he was embarrassing me when he was doing it, and he was hurting me, so I didn't want him to come up and do it again. So that was, like, my first real experience of seeing, like, ooh, this is not, it didn't sit well with me. But what happened is then we ended up going back to his house that night, and his way to obviously, you know, deal with everything was to love bomb again. And, you know, how I handled myself so well with his friends and how I was his dream girl and, oh, you know, you're probably going to be the girl I'm going to marry one day. And I just, again, he took a situation where I started to get my guard up, and I think he could tell I was getting a little bit, you know, my eyes were being opened a bit. So then it was his way of coping and dealing with it was just, okay, well, let's just slam her with more love bombing to kind of distract her from what just happened. And
specifically, he uses the, I guess, the marriage aspect of everything, or at least the future planning in it. And that's obviously a big thing for you as far as how your trust was built, that would settle you down. Yes. I mean, he played into that constantly, right? Let's bring up a family, let's bring up children, and that's going to keep her going, right? So, I mean, again, just another example, too, with more of his aggression was just, you know, I met another one of his friends, and, you know, he had one of his buddies over for pizza one night, and, you know, we're all sitting and talking. You know, usually I carry the conversation most when we were around other people because, he was very socially awkward, and he just didn't know, he couldn't carry a conversation properly in a group setting. It was like foreign to him. When he did carry a conversation, though, with me around, it was to make little jabs at me. Like, oh, you know, when she's here, you know, her hair sheds so much, I have to spend like an hour cleaning it out of the shower drain, and making little jokes and jabs at me. And I remember his guy friend looking over at me and saying, like, I hope you're giving it back to this guy. Like, I could tell he was getting upset with how my ex was talking about me or talking to me. So again, it was another thing where it's just like he had to just poke. Like, he had to poke at me. But then again, at the end of the night, when his friend left, let's love bomb. Oh, you're the best thing. My friend loved you. You're wonderful. You know, I can't wait to have a future with you. Like, that was, again, he could tell that I was getting agitated, so he had to deal with it by love bombing again. Did you ever get the sense that his friends didn't like him at all? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Did they ever say anything to you? No, but you can always tell by people's looks on their faces that they were super kind and wonderful to me, but I could almost see the look in their eyes as if, like, what are you doing, girl? Like, do you know who this person really is? Which at the time didn't clue into me, but obviously after the fact, I really realized that there probably was some, like, why is this girl putting herself through this? Or we know who the real guy is. This isn't going to last. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's just, you know, even very early on, he was very much somebody who he had to, there was a situation where he had to implant thoughts in my head where he would tell me very early on, you are very important to me. And every text message that we had, and any time we said goodnight, in bold letters, you are very important to me. Every conversation, that's how it had to end. And at first you think it's sweet and you think it's cute, but then after a while, you know, when somebody's like saying it all the time, it's almost like they're constantly trying to tell you, haha, don't look anywhere else. You're very important to me. Like, you got nothing to worry about here. It's a slow subliminal message. You don't realize it's a subliminal because it's right in front of your face. but the more it's said, the more it's imprinting in you.
Yeah. Like, I remember the first time he actually said it out loud to me, I was in his bed, and he pulled me over towards him and held on to me tight. And in my ear, he whispered those words. And I remember feeling like, ew, like, this doesn't feel right. But at the same time, you feel so overwhelmed with the fact that somebody adores you, or you think adores you so much that you're thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe this is just the way that it's supposed to feel. I don't know. It felt very forceful and almost kind of like he was trying to brainwash me into those words, like repeat them constantly over and over again. And maybe I can, it'll make her stay. She's never going to leave if she thinks that she's so important to me. So yeah, I guess that kind of trickles into, very early on, he planned a trip for us together. I'd say probably within the first month, he's like, oh, let's go to my parents' condo in Florida. I'll pay for everything. I'll take care of everything. And I'm like, I'm good. Like, I work. I can take care of my own stuff. Like, just tell me how much it's going to cost. I can handle it. And so anyways, we ended up going, and I'll be honest, the first half of the trip was fine. We had a good time together. I mean, again, like, I want to stress, there was some normalcy to the relationship, and it wasn't all chaos all over the place. There were moments and sections in that relationship where it was actually very normal, and it felt very much like a relationship. I remember we were at his parents, obviously back at his parents' condo. It was down by the beach, and he had noticed that a guy was checking me out at the beach, and I guess he ran up to me to basically tell me, oh, yeah, you're never going to believe some guy was looking at you, and it's almost like he got a little bit of a thrill out of it or something. Again, strange. He did that consistently in our relationship. And I remember as we were walking back to the condo after being on the beach, I said to him, listen, like, you're not upset about that, because he was starting to get a little bit quiet, that somebody was looking at me or somebody was checking me out. And I didn't want him to, like, listen, you're not bothered by it, are you? And, that I don't want, like, who cares what other people think of me? Like, I'm with you. I'm happy with you. Like, I want to be with you. Like, don't be insecure about it or anything. You have nothing to worry about. And I remember him looking at me saying, I can get any girl I want. My cooking can get me any girl I want. Like, and I remember it just, again, the tone of it was such aggression, and it was looking at me like, you're so replaceable. Don't even worry about it. Like, I can get somebody at the drop of a hat. And I remember, like, my heart dropping and feeling like, wow, here's some person who's love bombing me so much. And they basically just tell me that I am easily replaceable and don't worry about it. I can get any girl I want. So I'm upset. We go back up to the condo, back to his parents, up to the room, and he knows that, I feel differently at this point, and he knows that I'm acting strange. I'm a little bit more quiet. And, he goes, no, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I said, listen, I just need to go for a walk. I just want to go for a walk. I want to kind of digest a few things. And my way of coping and my way of dealing with situations is usually to walk it off and just figure it out and come back with, more of a clear head. But he refused. He wanted to know what was going on. And that's where I really stood up for myself in that moment. And I said, listen, like, what you did downstairs and what you said, it really hurt me. And my past, and the things that have hurt me deeply, and being cheated on. And I don't understand why you had to go there. And of course, back into the whole bombing and just saying, babe, don't worry. Like, I'm sorry. I never want to hurt you. You know how special and how important you are to me, and you're the world to me. And I'd never hurt you, and all this stuff. So again, it was brushed off. But I would say that at that point, there was a shift, because I stood up for myself in that situation. And that's where I could tell, going forward in the relationship, he was going to start to ramp things up a lot more. And he was going to start gunning at the things that were my fears. So yeah, came home from the trip, and then within a few weeks within a week or so after that, he had made the suggestion of meeting my family. And keep in mind at this point too, he had brought up his family. I guess he wanted to have me for Easter dinner, and he said, listen, my family is not ready to meet you yet. They're not over my ex. They're not over the situation. So they're just not comfortable with meeting somebody so early on. And I thought, okay, that's fine. Like, whatever. It's still early on in the relationship. Obviously, they had a good connection with your ex. So therefore, like, that's actually a good thing. But yeah, then it was kind of, there was a shift. All of a sudden now he wanted to meet my family. So yeah, I was super excited. I finally thought, okay, obviously the trip went well. He wants to meet my family. Things are headed in a good direction. So this next situation was definitely, I would say, the most eye-opening experience for me, where it really, it really bothered me, and I saw the mask, the narcissistic mask that that mask that they wear. This is where it really fully dropped for me for the first time. My mom is the type of person where she's incredibly loving, and she's incredibly, sometimes a bit too much with the emotional, she gets way too excited, and I think she was just very excited for me. So during that night, my mom started to snap a few photos of him, just randomly. Photos of us, photos of him, just out of excitement, no big deal. So night comes to an end. Everybody's saying goodbye. I thought the night went pretty decently. He was acting a little bit odd during the night. He was a little bit more quiet than usual, but I didn't really make anything of it. So we leave my brother's house, get into his truck, and just before the door can even shut, he looked over at me. And it was like this look in his eyes, like, you're going to get it look. Like, basically looked at me and said, just to let you know, if your mom ever looks at me that way, or ever snaps shots of me like that ever again, she's going to have a problem, and we're going to have a problem. And I remember going like, what? Like, what do you mean shots? Your mom kept taking pictures. You know how much I don't like people taking pictures of me. How dare she? If you don't say anything about this, I'm going to deal with it. I'm going, and in that moment, what I'm feeling is, okay, I'm afraid of him. I feel fearful of him because he's being very aggressive with me, and he's basically yelling at me at this point. 2, I'm afraid of losing him because now it's a matter of he's not getting along with my family. He's already finding fault. So what if he doesn't want to be with be around my family? And then 3, that what if he can't handle situations with my family going forward, right? So I had all these thoughts going through my head, and honestly, I was devastated. I was terrified. I had no idea what just happened because I just saw a completely different side of this person that was so aggressive. So we end up going back to my house, and again, by that point, I'm just I'm beside myself, and we walk into my house, and he starts hugging me and kissing me. It's like all of a sudden this shift, this snap, like nothing happened. Meanwhile, I'm standing there, I'm absolutely devastated. I have no idea what just happened. So we end up going straight to bed because I couldn't handle any more conversation with him anyways.
So now you're just you're confused. You have fear. You feel obligated to do a lot of the things he's wanting you to do. You're programmed, you're controlled. He's used aggression, then the love bombing. He touches your boundaries with, he's still using the mirroring. And now in a certain way, is it kind of like he's isolating you from your family?
Yeah, he knows, or he's at least targeting the things that I love and that I told him I really value at this, from very early on, he knew that. I stood up. I find it odd and different that, I stood up for myself, and then all of a sudden, all these little things start happening, right? So, yeah, he was targeting my family, and I felt a mix of defensiveness for my mom and my dad and my family. My brother and my sister-in-law. They were nice enough to have this guy over, and all of a sudden now he's acting this way. And then I also felt defensive towards him because I'm going, well, here's this person I care about, and my mom did something that bothered him, and I don't want to lose him over this. So there's just, my head's very conflicted. So
at this point, the fog, the fear, obligation, and guilt is supremely secured.
At this point, I'm anxious. I don't know where to turn. And, here I am telling my family, one thing, and I'm saying, oh, no, he's great. Things are going well, because at moments they were. But then I would get hit with these little things here, these little bombs of aggression here and there, where I didn't know what was going on. I was very very confused, you know, and anytime I started to catch on, I felt like that was the point where he would then feel that his way to resolve it was just to tell me how wonderful I was. So, you know,
he was a pro. He was a true pro. He knew at this point, he knew exactly what he could and couldn't do. He knew exactly what he could do to you, and he knew exactly what to say to reel you back in.
Yeah. Here I am thinking that this guy has real good motives for the relationship, and meanwhile, it's completely not that way. His motives were very, like, sadistic and insidious at this point. Like, he just wanted to, you know, looking back on the relationship now, he was looking to destroy me. And he was looking to use anything that I held with value and love and regard, and he was looking to destroy it.
And he liked control. Like, he really, it seems like here, when you're listening to all this, it seems like he really, like, got off on the control aspect of everything. I mean, the story that, you know, that involves your family and the pictures, that in itself, the way he acted was probably like a child, you know, and that's what it reminds me of when you were telling the story. In that, like, he's in control here. He's calling the shots. He's doing what he wants, and he's being able to control you in public, which is why it's interesting when you said in private he acts in one way, but in public he's getting you to act in these other ways, which is pretty interesting to see. Like, maybe in his mind he's like, oh, I can do whatever I want behind closed doors. That's one thing, but if I can control her in public, look at that. This is how that makes me feel. Yeah.
Like, even just, I think is when the relationship just started to nosedive at that point. And
so this is I guess when Act 3 really begins.
Oh yeah, this is like when you're just getting he at this point just doesn't give a shit, and
this is brazen acts, doesn't care, and the end.
Yes. So keep in mind at this time we're still seeing each other 4 or 5 times a week, but there was a huge shift in his personality. He basically at that point said, like, okay, well, you know, like, I guess I'll see you on the next weekend. Like, I'm going to be working during the week, and I'm going to be busy with the house renovation. So, you know, you go do your thing, and I'll go do my thing, and we'll see each other on the weekends, which, again, is not like him. We were together all the time, and it just something felt off. You know, he'd make little jokes or remarks saying, like, you know, something about being in a dead-end relationship, or he'd hear something on TV and saying, like, kind of like what we are in, and then go, oh, don't worry, I'm just kidding. Like, I didn't really mean that. I'm just joking, right? Just little digs here and there, or little things to get my mind going. Still, though, I think he was, you know, smart enough in his ways to know that he still had to do trickles of love bomb here and there to keep me, because he couldn't full go into devaluation mode, because I think he knew I was a bit smarter than that, and I may have just been like, no, like, we're done then at that moment. So, you know, at this point, I'm feeling quite isolated from my family. I'm feeling like I can't have these conversations or discussions because they see the relationship in a very different way. I'm starting to feel more anxious around him. He's amping up these remarks that are making me question the relationship. I'm not seeing him as much. He brings up then at this point, you know, I had known he had, I think very, very early on, I told you about the friend that he had took out for to the movies and for something to eat, the girl that he said had cancer. So during this phase, this act right here, I had asked him, I had said, like, you know, how's she doing? How's she feeling? You know, you haven't really brought her up much. And I remember him looking at me and saying, like, yeah, I think she liked me. We don't talk anymore. And I'm going, like, this is somebody that you know, we're being very descriptive about the type of cancer that they had and how caring you were and how strong of a person you thought they were. So that's where things started to, like, click. Like, I don't think that, like, who knows if she even had that, or if he made that up so that he could go out with her. I guess the final week prior to the final end, I just knew something wasn't right. My gut was going. I was literally at this point starting to get an actual physical reaction from being around this person. Like, there was maybe 2 or 3 times where I had to run to the bathroom to throw up because I felt so anxious and so sick. And I'm not somebody who suffers from anxiety or depression or anything like that. We all dealt with situational anxiety, but this was different. This was like, I can't even be around him. And he would say things that would get me so anxious that I would have to, jet line it to the bathroom just to get it out of my body, all this anxiety and anxiousness. So, yeah, I remember that week to the week of the end. I remember on the Wednesday him saying, hey, listen, I want to, a friend of mine wants to come down, and he had brought him up in the past. So I was like, okay, yeah, go, we're going to come down. He's going to come down. We're going to go for a few drinks. Is that okay? And I remember him saying to him, yeah, you don't have to ask for permission. You go ahead. That's fine. Well, it's just Friday nights we usually spend together, and I just want to have respect for you, and I want to ask and make sure you're okay with it. So yeah, that's fine. Go do what you got to do. You're allowed to have your friends. I have my friends. That was fine. The Friday night he went out. I went out too. And then the Saturday, we had decided to spend Saturday and Sunday together. I go over and I walk into his house, and, he's downstairs. He calls up to me, and, I'll be up in 1 minute. So I'm standing there waiting and, just, getting my shoes off, whatever. He comes upstairs and he walks right past me, doesn't even make eye contact. And that's not like him. Usually he's more at the door, saying hello. It was almost like he was just completely avoiding me. So I go up to him and I'm like, oh, hey, I'm here. hi. Oh, you don't even look like you're happy to be here. So he's trying to start an argument with me. And I'm thinking no, I'm not happy. You just walked right past me. You didn't even acknowledge that I was here. Of course I'm going to be a little bit taken back by it. So that just set the tone up. And it just felt like there was just a shift or a major change with him. And he was at this point just didn't care. And he was just going to be whoever he wanted to be in front of me.
And just one thing before you continue, just for everyone out there who's been through this or knows what we're talking about, the people that don't know what we're talking about, that moment when you knew it had changed, it was like something physically happened inside you. You just knew it was over in your mind, probably. You just couldn't see yet how long it would take. But in your mind, did you realize at that moment, when you felt that shift, that it was done? You were just waiting to see how?
I think for me, it was the look, the walking past me. That's when I knew, now we're counting down this is coming to an end. So I remember waking up Monday morning and I drove to work. I was only work about 10 minutes away from where he is. And I remember leaving his house and just knowing that something was going to happen soon. I just knew it. Again, those few days were just very eye-opening for me. So I ended up going to work for the day, and I kind of had a game plan. It's time to really figure out who this person is. And so I ended up finishing work. I ended up texting him and saying, because he used to get angry. If I didn't text him when work was finished or when I was on my way home, he would text me saying, I expect you to text me and let me know that you're going home because I don't want to worry about you. Again, another form of control, right? Mm-hmm. So I texted him. He ended up saying, oh, yeah, okay, hey, babe, yeah, get home safe, blah, blah, blah. I, for some reason, said, I am sticking around where I was, and I'm going to go for dinner. So I ended up grabbing a coworker and going and grabbing a bite to eat at a restaurant just down the street from my work, and shot him a message probably around 6 o'clock saying, hey, I ended up sticking around, what are you up to? I didn't get a response. And he didn't respond for maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours later. And I remember thinking, that is not like him. Very strange. And I just, again, my gut was like, oh, something is off. Something's not right here. So he ends up messaging me. And he says, oh, hey, babe, I was just downstairs doing laundry. And my phone was up on the charger. Don't worry. I what are you doing tonight? What are your plans? Are you going anywhere? Are you going to be doing anything? And I remember thinking, you are not being honest right now. And I don't know why I felt that way. I just did. So I had a key at this point, and it was very much a relationship where it was a kind of a come and go. And, again, he had always told me, be sure to tell anybody she has a key. She can come and go as she pleases. She's never going to find anything. Like, he made that known. So I ended up driving to his house because I had to do it. Again, everything in me was saying, just do it. And I remember on my phone with my sister-in-law and saying, like, listen, I know something's going on. I don't want to feel like a crazy girl here, but at the same time, like, I know something isn't right, and I feel like I need to do this. And I remember her saying, oh, well, probably nothing's wrong. You're just overthinking it, and he's probably not doing anything. I said, no, like, I just feel like something's wrong. And I ended up pulling into his driveway, and his car is not there, and I knew it. That was it for me. Like, it took for me not to see his vehicle in the driveway and to know he never parks in his garage because he's always got tools and stuff in there. That's all it took for me to know lying. Like, I just knew it. So I ended up going inside, and he's not there because I thought maybe in some twisted way he's, like, parked down the street. And you make up a million excuses in your mind because you don't want to believe the truth at that point. And, nobody's there to be found. And I remember picking up my phone and sending him a message and saying, your key is in the mailbox. I don't understand why you're lying to me. Because he was pretending to be somewhere where he wasn't. And I knew, like, at that point, I just knew the relationship was done. I told you, once you start lying and start going behind my back, it's done. So he ended up messaging me probably within the next 15 minutes. Actually, he called me and saying, it's not what it looks like. It's not what it looks like. And I said, listen, I ended up sticking around because I felt like I needed to actually have a face-to-face with him and give him, let him hear what I had to say. And he ends up coming back. And weirdly enough, because I had went over to a coffee shop before he actually ended up coming home, when I ended up driving back to his house, his door was wide open. Like, he was ready for me to come in. Like, he knew that something was going to come out of this one. I remember walking into his house and him looking at me like a deer in headlights. And just like he knew he was caught red-handed. And I said, listen, what is the one thing I told you in this relationship? It's just never lie to me. And you're lying. And I know that something is up. I said, where were you tonight? Like, where? And I remember him looking at me and saying, I was out with a girl. And there was nothing, just straight face. I was out with a girl. I was out with somebody. And I said, like, I'm trying to look for answers. Like, were you on a date? Yeah, I was on a date with somebody. Like, I was out with someone. And I said, okay. I said, well, firstly, we're done. Like, the relationship is over. And then I remember him saying, I remember asking the question, like, so on the Friday, were you with what was going on? Just like, were you actually with guy friends? No, I was on a date. I was with somebody. And that's when I told him, I said, I think you are absolutely an awful person. I think you're a horrible person. You totally betrayed my trust. You went behind my back. You've been seeing other girls. Like, we're in a relationship here. And I said, like, I never want to see you again, and I think you're a pathological liar. And that whole time, he sat there, no emotion, said, the only thing he kept saying to me is, I'm sorry, I don't want to hurt you, I'm sorry, and I know this is going to be the biggest thing I'm ever going to regret, and I wish I never did this to you. But there was no true emotion behind it. He always said from the beginning of the relationship is that he lacked empathy. I don't have empathy. You're the one that's empathetic in the relationship. I don't bring that side. I didn't know what a narcissist was, really, at this point. So I always thought, okay, so maybe he's just a little bit less caring or cares a little less than I did. No, like, he had no empathy for me. He could care less that I'm sitting there broken in front of him, totally devastated because he's been going out and dating other girls behind my back, and openly admitted it. Like, didn't even try to, deflect it or
Well, at that point, the jig was completely up.
Oh yeah.
There was no going backwards. He already had his new supply of whatever he was going to. So the real guy, the actual real guy, sat there, and you saw this emotionless shark of a sorts who was just sitting there being like, you're probably like, so what? What are you gonna do?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't need you anyways. I got somebody on the wing. Like, you're easily replaceable. So yeah, he didn't care. There was no tear. And I remember just handing him his key back, walking out of the house, and just saying, don't ever contact me again. Of course, he pushed the boundary. Within 5 minutes of me leaving the house, sends me a text message saying, please text me when you get home that you got home safely.
He was just checking. He's just checking to see if his control would still work. And that was just really... For him, it was all about control, to see even in that moment, to see how far maybe he could even take it further, because that's his thought process. That's how he would have gotten off. If she gets home and then she texts me back, or this and this happens, that would make him feel good. That's how sadistic that is and how it was. So now that it is over.
Yeah.
Can you just, I guess, discuss how you're healing, how you're doing, and maybe discuss how the devaluation took a toll on you? Because you had a major devaluation happen in the time you were there or with him. So how'd that take a toll on you, and how are you recovering?
I would say the beginning was challenging. It was hard. It was like I was having to relive a trauma that had happened to me when I was in my early 20s all over again. It almost felt like a very similar situation. So I was devastated for the first little while. But what I started doing, and I don't even know how this came about, but one of my biggest things dealing with healing was to start researching narcissism and everything it was about. I don't even know how narcissist popped into my mind. It's just something I looked up, and I didn't even know to the extent of what narcissism was, and that it's a mental health issue, it's a mental illness. And I always thought that, people had narcissistic traits. I didn't know that there was a full-blown illness related to it. So I just threw myself into studying, learning absolutely every single thing I could about narcissism. And I probably overdid it, and I probably stayed up many nights learning about it and understanding it. And I just saw so many similarities to the relationships I was in the past. And I could literally full-blown say that every relationship that I have been with a male has been with a narcissist. And, that gave me kind of some tools and some ammo to really look at it and say, like, okay, this is the person I was dealing with. A second form of healing for me was obviously throwing myself into therapy, like, immediately. Like, don't even think about it. Don't even just do it. So I found myself one that deals specifically with trauma, and she was fantastic. She, allowed me to vent my situation, but then she was very focused on, my situation with the narcissist, but then she was very focused on my healing from my past traumas, the suppression suppression of just past childhood wounds, the bullying situation with the girlfriends that I had, really uncovering where my boundary issues were and where I had, some severe suppression trauma in my life that just, I almost pretended like it didn't happen. I wasn't dealing with it.
So you have been working on all the boundaries that he pushed down or he penetrated, and that were created from your youth, from when you were a child, to the stuff that happened with those girls when you were a teenager. All of those types of issues, you then went back to try and plug those holes.
Yeah, I tried to. Obviously, I feel like with a narcissistic relationship, you don't just get into them. There's a reason why people stay in them, and a lot of it has to do with things in your past you may have not dealt with. This might be hard for some people to maybe hear. For me, it resonated just in my healing and my way of dealing with things was sometimes you meet people like this, or you keep going over a situation over and over again to learn from it. And also that narcissist can sometimes be a catalyst for your own personal healing or uncovering past wounds that you haven't dealt with. And as much as I hate that this situation happened and how awful it is to be in my stage of healing now, can look back on it and say it was the worst, but yet the best thing that's happened to me, because it's made me really, really look inwards and realize, why am I attracting this? Why do I keep going back to the same type of person? And what I was able to find is that I had not dealt with a lot of stuff from my past. I had kind of just locked it up in a box, threw it away into the ocean, and said, hey, at some point I'll deal with this, but it ain't going to be now. And this situation particularly has forced me to deal with it.
Well, Jenna Lee, I want to thank you for being on the show today and telling your story and sharing your experience and your knowledge and your healing with us, because your healing process has been thorough. And one of the things a lot of people sometimes don't realize is it takes a lot of work on your end to heal and to move forward, and doing the work takes, you hear it, but it's a lot of work to do, and it's something that you have to do every single day, and it's a constant thing. Because if you let it slide, you'll slip back into your old patterns. And so you have to kind of do it every single day and build and build and build and build and build until one day you look backwards and there's no way you can go back. You're already that many steps forward and a new foundation has been built. And once that new foundation has been built, then you can really start rebuilding your house. But it starts off with rebuilding that new foundation. And it sounds like you've done it. And you should be proud of yourself.
Yeah.
for doing so. And I just once again, I want to thank you for being on the show.
Yeah. And thank you for having me and having a podcast that, during my healing journey, just listening to the stories and hearing other women, that gave me a place where I can, I feel like I had somebody who understood me, or had people who were going through something similar. So I got to say thank you to you as well.
Well, you are welcome. And on behalf of you, I just want to tell everyone, have a great night, and we'll see you next week. And that was my conversation with Jenna Lee. So once again, I want to thank Jenna Lee for being part of the show, and for everyone out there who always wondered why someone would stay for a certain amount of time, or why someone would put themselves through this type of abuse. This is the reason. They're methodically broken down, and you can see in the story by someone who is sadistic, her partner at the time, how they actually did it and how they can psychologically get the trust in and then keep you on a string. So before I leave you today, just want to say one more time, our Facebook group is hopping, and you should go there to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/narcissistapocalypse. You want to be part of our group. And also, for our Letters to a Narcissist episode, if you want to be part of that episode, there's a voicemail recorder on our website to record. Go to narcissistapocalypse.com. It's on the right side of the page. It's a floating button, hard to miss. It says send voicemail. Press that button, away you'll go. It records once, twice, 3 times, or 4, as many times as you need. It records up to 5 minutes each time. We're accumulating these letters to have for volume 2 of that episode, so send us those voicemails. And now, the show is over. Be well, and bye for now.